started right at 9:30 so we can give Daniel all the time he needs during this Bible class hour. It's wonderful to see all of you this morning. We've been getting these beautiful sunshine Sundays. Well, we got a little rain today, but not too bad. It's supposed to be over by the time we leave services today. I did want to mention that Sister Faye Reeves lost her sister-in-law, and we want to express our deepest sympathy to Faye and be sure to remember her in our prayers. We're honored today to have Brother Daniel Gaines with us, and we have begun again to support Daniel in his work in Tanzania. And so he's going to be talking about that during Bible classes and then preaching to us today during the worship hour. His dad, Brother John Gaines, is the preacher at Sneed with the Antioch congregation, and I've spoken over there many times, and his dad and I are really good friends, and we appreciate this family so very, very much. And Daniel, appreciate the wonderful work that you and your family have done for so many years. And so we're honored to have him with us today. And before I turn things over to Daniel, I want to lead us in a word of prayer, okay? Father, we're so thankful for another Lord's Day and for the privilege to be here during this Bible class hour, and especially today to have Daniel with us. Bless this fine young man and his work in Tanzania and all the good work that he and his dad and their wonderful family do for your church. We ask you to bless all of them with good health, long lives, and great success in your kingdom. We pray especially for the work in Tanzania, that it may continue to grow and prosper, and that many souls will continue to be saved from sin. Father, we ask you to bless Sister Faye and all of her family in their loss with comfort and strength. We're thankful that you are the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort, and that you comfort us in all of our difficulties. And we just ask your blessings on Faye and this wonderful family today. Bless all the others that we have on our sick list. Please continue to help them to get better. And just bless us now. And we're so thankful again for Daniel and his good work. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is such a pleasure for me to be back at Arab again. It's been a few years, but you guys were steadfast supporters the whole time that we were living full time in Tanzania from 2013 to 2016, and I always enjoyed visiting here during that time. And appreciate you guys coming back on board and y'all being a part of this new phase of our involvement in the work in Tanzania. Just as a reminder here, this is my support system. These are the people that stand behind me as I stand before you. And so I always like to let people know, remind them who I'm representing. You know, this arrangement is a little bit different than when y'all supported us before. Before, you supported our family to work along with Tanzania Missions. Now our role is different, and I'll explain that as we go, but because the previous coordinator passed away, I've stepped into that position, and now I'm coordinating the overall work. We're not working as a part of it. So you're not supporting our family directly now to work along with the work. You're supporting the work directly. that I'm coordinating and trying to raise funds for. It's a big part of my role is trying to keep funding up for the overall work. And so that's something that we'll talk about. But where I want to start is to try to impress upon you the greatness of our task. Sometimes people might think, well, you know, I know I'm familiar with 4 or 5 different works in Africa. How much mission work does Africa really need? Seems like there's always somebody doing mission work in Africa. Have they not been evangelized yet? What's taking so long, right? People a lot of times don't realize how big of a territory that we're talking about, how great the task is. And so there's a couple of ways I've learned to illustrate that. One is by drive time. All right, so if we were to compare this to our own continent, if we were going to drive the long way diagonally across our continent, starting in Miami, Florida, going all the way to North Pole, Alaska, then it would take you 4,835 miles to drive that, and 77 hours to drive that. Now, I have not verified this through personal experience, mind you, but according to Google Maps, this is how long it would take you. And, of course, you'd have to stop once or twice along the way. Anyway, but similarly, if we were going to drive up the continent of Africa, starting in Cape Town, South Africa, going all the way up to Cairo, Egypt, then it would take you, if you go the short way, 159 hours. Drive those, I can't even read the slide up there, 6,276 miles is how long that would take. That's a huge, huge area, much, much larger than driving across North America. Another way to illustrate it is to show you that on that landmass of Africa, you could fit the United States and China and India and Western Europe and Japan all on that landmass. It's huge. Now, how many missionaries do those countries need? Right? How much mission work do those? Now, just to avoid confusion, this is not an actual map of the countries in Africa. Don't want anybody to be confused thinking China's in Africa or the United States is in Africa. It's not. But just to show you how big an area it is we're talking about. Now, we're specifically concerned with Tanzania, the East African nation just below the equator. They're on the eastern coast of Africa, home to Mount Kilimanjaro, home to the Serengeti, home to, it borders Lake Victoria, a lot of things like that that are kind of quintessentially African in my mind. It's a beautiful country to visit, and it's the people there are beautiful, beautiful people to work with and to know and love. Here's another size picture for you. This is Tanzania superimposed on the southeastern United States. So that gives you a size comparison with a region that you're more familiar with. That helps us to understand a little bit more about the area that we're talking about. But what we really are concerned about are the people. And right now in Tanzania and in Africa in general, the population is exploding. And it's doing so for 2 reasons. One, the birth rate in Africa has always been very high, and it continues to be high. But secondly, the death rate, the mortality rate, has also been very high in the past, but modern medicine is beginning to spread. People are living longer. People are having healthier lives, and perhaps nowhere in the world has more to gain from the spread of modern medicine than does Africa, and they are benefiting from it. So with those 2 factors working together, the result is right now in Africa, for every 1 person that dies, there are 4 people born. 1 to 4 ratio. Now, you don't have to be a mathematician to know that's an exploding population. And so the people that study these things tell us to expect that by the end of this century, which is coming closer and closer all the time, by the end of this century, they expect Tanzania to be the 8th most populous nation in the whole world. And they expect this largest city of Dar es Salaam to be the 3rd most populous city in the whole world. Now, that's stunning to me. And so, in this type of exploding population, we have this sweet spot that we're operating in right now. People are still very hungry for the gospel. That window is still wide open for evangelism there. Now, I expect that it won't always be as open as it is now. I expect people won't always be as receptive as they are now, as is the pattern in every country. You have windows of opportunity. The door is open right now. And so, as for every conversion we're able to help with now, there's a real chance of that person being the matriarch or patriarch of a large Christian family. That's our hope. And you get the generations and population growth working for you and along with you. And of course, the people are the main attraction. You know, I used this slide for a while, trying to point out some lifestyle stuff. This doesn't have a pointer on it, does it? The top picture, the picture in the top right corner, I used to talk about how that is showing how some people carried stuff on their heads all the time, which they do. They go any distance, they're going to carry it on their head. Well, eventually, Tiffany, my wife, pointed out to me, you know, that's a scarecrow. That's not a person. And I got to looking closer and closer, and she was right. That was indeed a scarecrow. That's not even a real person there, but that's how a real person would do it if they were going to do it. So the aspects of the work, it's still the same four pillars of the work that has always been. That's one of the things I like about this work is there's balance. It's involved in a lot of the things that the church is supposed to be concerned about, and I appreciate that. The first area that we'll talk about here is preacher training. That's essential if the church is going to be sustainable and grow in any region long term. There has to be a way to train local men to be evangelists, to be leaders in the church, and to help those churches to be planted and to grow. There has to be a model for that. And so we have the Andrew Connolly School of Preaching, which established in 2001 has been a tremendous success. It's an established work with a good track record. We've had, during our time, students come to us, not only from Tanzania, lots of students from Tanzania, but also a lot of students from Kenya, students from Uganda, from South Sudan, from Ethiopia. We've had them from as far away as Nigeria. Altogether, 7 or 8 African nations have been touched by this work, had men trained at this school and gone back to their home countries and been evangelists. As a matter of fact, now there are a couple of schools of preaching in Kenya, one available in Dar es Salaam. There's one on the horizon coming in South Sudan, and one planned for Uganda as well. And our graduates are the ones that are operating all of those schools and training other preachers in all those locations. So we'll never know this side of heaven all the good that's done from this pyramid of good, from the guys that we train to the guys that they train. And that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to in heaven is to see just how far these ripples went as we think about the tremendous amount of good that we're able to be a small part of. Here was last year's graduating class. We had 16 graduates in that class. It was a Swahili-speaking class. It's a 2-year program. Every year we bring in, we swap the language of the class we bring in. So that year that graduated was a Swahili-speaking class. This year's graduating class will be an English class. And so the class that we brought in at the beginning of this year was a Swahili class to replace this class. 16 was a pretty big class. We now have our new students that took their place. We brought in 34. 34 new students that have come in. That's the largest class that I can remember since I've been associated with work. I'm not even sure where we're putting all of them. Them along with the second years are straining our capacity really, but we want to train as many people as we possibly can, and it's exciting to know that the work is growing that way. The school is growing. There's still lots of people that want to be trained and need to be trained in that work. I mentioned to you that our previous director passed away here a couple of years ago, in 2017 actually, Cy Stafford. He was my dear friend and mentor. He was the one that recruited our family to be involved in the work in Tanzania. years and years ago. He asked me at one time if I would be willing to take over the work after he left it. We had no idea it would be so soon. He asked me that back in 2015. We were still living full-time in Tanzania. And honestly, at that time, that wasn't something that I was looking to do. I had made commitments back here, and we wanted to come back here. We weren't looking to continue being involved in that role. But that, God's plans are not always our plans. And as God's providence worked, it became obvious that this is what we needed to do, especially after Cy passed on and we saw what was happening with the work as it didn't have a director there for a year or two. So we came back on and assumed that role, and so a big part of that is I'm responsible now, I mentioned earlier, not for the funding just for our family. I'm responsible for the funding for the entire work. It's a large work. So there's a lot that's involved in that. So doing these sorts of presentations is a necessity, but it's also a benefit because I get to see and meet so many people around the brotherhood. And you see, in fundraising, you see a different side of brotherhood than you do in local work. You see both amazed at the goodness of people and sometimes a little disappointed at the lack of importance that some people see in mission work and things like that. But mostly it's a positive thing. So I also want to point out the team that's on the ground helping, making things work when I'm here. They can't be here today to tell you thank you, and so I'm here in their stead. These guys and a lot of other guys over there depend on the work that I'm doing here and on you and other mission-minded people like you. And so a big part of what I need to do is be a bridge. And they let you know how important what they are doing is, and to extend to you their gratitude for your involvement. This is Augustine, Ahimadiwe, and Charles, and they are the leadership team of the School of Preaching. There on the ground. I was the last American director of the School of Preaching, and part of my job was training these guys to take my place. And so they're directing the School of Preaching itself now as far as leadership on the ground. And I'm in constant contact with them. Matter of fact, we had a Zoom meeting just yesterday with these guys. But they're doing tremendous things, and proud of them. All right, and then personal evangelism, that's what it's really all about. Our job, our goal is to increase the population of heaven. And we can do that in two ways. We can do that by making it to heaven ourselves, and we do that by helping others to get there. And that's really the only two things we can do that have real meaning after this life is over. Well, in this work this past year, we're happy to say that there were 478 lost souls that were baptized, another 305 erring souls that were restored to the Lord. And you've got almost 800 lost souls that have been reclaimed from Satan through this just in the last year. And what I want to do is illustrate how evangelism works in the mission field, in this mission field, by telling you the story of how the church was planted and grew in the Lakes region of Tanzania. Because if you follow this story, then I think you're going to see well illustrated how different parts of the body, each playing their role, leads to the edification and growth of the whole body, which is a very biblical concept, right? Well, let's begin our story with a man named Pascal that moved to an area. I don't have a picture of Pascal, but Pascal was a Christian. He was his doctrine honestly was not perfect. It was kind of an Apollos situation. He had some things that he needed to be taught a little bit more perfectly, but he knew the plan of salvation, and he knew how to worship by the New Testament pattern, and he had some tracts. And he started giving out these tracts to this area where he moved, including this man, Bahati, and his family. So Bahati and his family received those tracts, obeyed the gospel, and began to worship under this fig tree in his backyard. So the Imilamagigo Church of Christ began under this fig tree. And this is where they meet now. We're in the process of trying to build them a proper permanent building. The problem is they're located in a very remote place, and it's difficult to get building materials to where they're at. You definitely have to have a four-wheel drive to get to them, and you can't even drive all the way there. You got to walk the last mile or so to get to where they're at up on a mountain. But anyway, we're working on that. So the church began meeting there. The missionaries in Arusha heard about them and sent a team to do some evangelism with them, to conduct a campaign. They sent a missionary, they sent an experienced African evangelist, they sent a preaching student by the name of Yusuf. I'm going to try to limit how many names I tell you so you don't get overwhelmed by them. But remember the name Yusuf, he's going to come back up in our story. And several others. They have a campaign here with the result that there are 11 conversions from the nearby city of Ushirombo. All right. So then, this is the church building where the church of Ushirombo meets now, and this is Yusuf that's standing there in front of the building. So during the Christmas break of that year, Yusuf is sent back from school to do a campaign with around the Ushirombo area, along with some other students at the time. And with the result that there are 16 more people that are converted. And after he graduates, Yusuf goes back to work full-time with the church at Ushirombo and help teach Paschal the way a little bit more perfectly. And so as he does that, he finds, let's say, here's Abby, my daughter, with the children of the Ushirombo congregation. Just to give you a sense of how much that church has grown since it was started, that this is just the children. Well, during that Christmas break campaign, there was a man from a nearby village of Lulumbella that was converted. This is Amos. He's now the preacher at the Lulumbella Church of Christ. Yusuf goes and helps him start a congregation in his home. Now they have a permanent building. Another man at that same campaign from a nearby village of Casabigio was converted. And so Yusuf goes to his village and helps him start a congregation in his home. And now this is their building where they're meeting. We were having a children's seminar there, and you can see kids are even just looking in the windows there trying to see what's going on and be a part of that. And then in August of that year, Paschal passed away suddenly, just over a year after passing out those tracts and watching 4 congregations and dozens of Christians spring up in the area. But the story doesn't stop there. In October of that year, we sent another campaign to work with the Mbambula Church. The headmaster of the Mbambula Primary School, that's this yellow building, was a member of the church, and he allowed us to have a campaign out of his schoolhouse, with the result that week there were 40 people baptized in this little pit. Now, not all at one time, they took turns. It's a small pit. But during the week, 40 people were baptized there. The first one was this lady. Her name's Rebecca. And the church was growing and thriving there. It grew to about 200 people before the government stepped in and said, you can't be running a church out of our schoolhouse. You're going to have to do something else. So for a while they met in this building until it became so weather damaged it wasn't safe anymore. Then they wound up in the backyard of this family and dwindled down to about 60 members in the process of all this. Well, now, thanks to American supporters, we were able to build them a permanent, safe place to meet. So they have a church building. This was in the construction phase. It's finished now, and the church is thriving and doing well there again. And I'm hoping to go and visit this congregation again in June of this year. That's my plan anyway. Here are the tracts that we produce and Bibles that we distribute in our evangelism. That's part of what I need to raise money for. We spend about $5,000 each year in producing these tracts for evangelism, and that's part of it. But I hope we could go on and tell of other congregations at Ntinga and Bunanda and Luzewe and Uyovu that all sprung up from that point. But this is enough, I think, for you to get the picture of how the church spread and evangelism worked in that area. So you saw, in that story, you saw tools, tracts and Bibles that were provided. You saw African evangelists, you saw missionaries, you saw preaching students all doing their part. You saw the impact of American supporters that were able to provide things that they couldn't provide for themselves, buildings and the materials and stuff like that. And so all of those things working together, each one playing their part, enabled the church to grow and thrive and multiply in that region. Were you able to follow that? Did that make sense? I hope it did. Seeing some blank faces, but not this way make me feel better. That's, I think, a beautiful picture of how this all works, and each one playing their part makes a difference. Evangelism there is so easy and edifying. The only limit to how many studies you can have is how much time you have to give to it. Maybe y'all would be interested in getting a campaign group together and going over and being involved in a campaign there. It would be a tremendous experience for you, life-changing potentially. That's how a lot of missionaries start, is with doing short-term work. A lot of the questions that you deal with there are going to be the same as things that you deal with here. Doctrinal things are going to be similar. You do wind up with a few things that are different. I was trying to make a point in a class I was teaching about socially acceptable sins. I asked the question, what are some sins that are socially acceptable in society? People just don't think twice about those things. Hand shot up, and the first answer was polygamy. Well, I'm not in Kansas anymore. That's not a question you get as much here, but it is an issue that has to be dealt with there. And this is some folks that were baptized at the Larai congregation last year. The lady on the far left and two of her teenage children, I studied with them. They were baptized, but what made them stand out to me has been an unusual study in baptism is she's Mexican. Kids are Mexican. Just another stereotypical thing. Guy from Kentucky goes to Africa and baptizes a family of Mexicans, right? It just, you never know how the providence of God is going to work and put people together at the right time and place. It turns out that she had married a Tanzanian man, so she was living there along with her kids, and she spoke beautiful English. It was refreshing to be able to have a Bible study in English while I was there, and so that's her story. Her name's Belinda, and she's still a faithful Christian to this day. Providing benevolence is the third area of the work. One of the ways that our faith is demonstrated is by how we seek to alleviate the sufferings of others, and that's a part of what we try to do. And we can't solve the problem of poverty, but we can make a difference in the lives of some folks. And so with the help of concerned American supporters, there's been food and shelter, some medical care, other needed things that have been provided for some very deserving people. Here in the height of the COVID restrictions, COVID was economically very devastating for Tanzania because their economy is heavily dependent on tourism. People come to Tanzania to go on safari, they come to Tanzania to climb Kilimanjaro, they come to visit Zanzibar. So there are some tourist attractions there. And some reason, early in 2020, people quit traveling. I don't know what happened there. Tourism, of course, COVID, tourism was cut off, and that was devastating for them. And so we were able to provide some rice and beans to some Christian families in the area, and that's those being distributed. Move on here. I don't want to run out of time and get the shepherd hook, but The fourth area of the work is edifying the church. We want the church to continue to grow, to mature. And we're not concerned just with baptizing people and patting them on the back and saying good luck. We want them to grow into faithful Christians and mature congregations. That's our goal. And so there's a lot of things that we do to try to be a part of that. We have 3 Bible schools, the Kilimanjaro Bible School, the Risha Bible School, the Kisango Bible School, that these are different from the school of preaching. The school of preaching is for people that are faithful Christians and want to be evangelists. The Bible schools are for anybody. They're just for learning the Bible. It's kind of a night school format. People come and are part of that. Those are great evangelistic tools. We even get denominational preachers that come sometimes and want to learn the Bible better, and we're happy to help them learn the way a little bit more perfectly. One time I was able to study with a denominational preacher, and he came to understand that what I was teaching was from the Bible, and it was different from what he'd always been taught. He wanted his people to know the truth. So he arranged a seminar in his congregation and had us and some others from the school come, and we spent hours one day preaching the gospel to this denominational congregation that had assembled. And with the result that one of their elders, several members were baptized that day, and several more converted through follow-up studies. So the gospel is powerful when it reaches souls that are hungry and open-minded. This is Tiffany doing a children's seminar at the Kisango Church. We try to do as many seminars as we can at different congregations, whether it be a children's seminar like this, or she does a lot of ladies' seminars as well, and I do things for the men. I like to. This is one of my favorite pictures. It's on our board in the back as well. If you get the chance after class, after church, go look at our board, get you a sticker, sign up for the newsletter, and you'll enjoy looking at that. But in this picture, there's some layers of what's going on. Let me walk you through. First, the setting. This is at this little Messiah congregation in the bush. It's a church that there's not a road to. We were driving. Our guide told me, all right, now go that way. And I said, where? There's not a road that way. He said, I know. So off we go. We just turn off across the field, and we're driving through the field, trying to dodge thorn bushes. You know, they've got these acacia bushes all over the place over there with these big 2-inch long thorns that'll flatten a tire. We're trying to avoid those things. And we find a creek bed. We just have to find our way across the creek bed. Certain times of the year you can't even get there because of the rain. Eventually we pop out in this clearing. There's a church building. And I wonder, how'd this even get here? There's nobody around. Who's going to come to this thing? We didn't pass very many houses. There's a few huts here and there, but they were sparse and far in between. Well, within an hour, 150 people had showed up literally out of the bush to be a part of the seminar that day. And so while Tiffany and the kids are inside the building doing a children's seminar, I'm out front doing I'm studying the Bible with the men that are there under a tree in the front yard. And so in this picture, that's what's going on. In the background, there's my American-born son leading Bible class songs in Swahili to these Messiah children that are gathered. And in the foreground, there's my Chinese-born daughter who's playing with the earring of this Messiah Bibi grandmother that had been so good to Gracie through the day. They had played together a lot and had a rapport going. And so, you know, there's this strange juxtaposition, these things that shouldn't go together, right? People born in 3 different continents, speaking different languages, all together in the bush of Africa. This picture has no business happening. But to me, this is a little glimpse as to what heaven is going to be like. We're going to be there in heaven with people that we don't have anything in common with except the blood of Christ. People from different times in history, different cultures, different languages, different races, all different in so many different ways. But we all have the blood of Christ, the love of Christ that joins us together and makes heaven possible, makes scenes like this possible. And that's, to me, a little glimpse of heaven and why we do what we do. There I am studying the Bible with some folks under that tree. At one time there was 12 of us, and I couldn't help but think about what 12 men were able to do on another occasion, and I prayed that God would help influence their society the way those 12 men had. At the School of Preaching, we've got a lot of other things we do. We have the Tanzania Leadership Conference every year. That's a big deal for us. It's kind of a lectureship. We have, let me tell you about this. This is new, and we're excited about it. Si's last vision for the work was to build a leadership school. And he died before that was able to get off the ground at all. But we remembered that vision and have carried it forward, and now the construction is complete on the Si Stafford School of Leadership. We're going to be taking in our first class this year. We're excited about that. You know, one of the purposes of this is a big hurdle that is difficult to overcome in mission works is getting churches to the level where they have fully functional elderships. In Africa, planting churches is pretty easy. Getting them to a certain point is pretty easy. Getting over that last hump of that real self-governance, when I have that eldership in place, has been challenging. There's only about 4 congregations I know of in all of Tanzania that have elderships. And so one of the things we want to do is try to train elders. And honestly, I wish that's something we did more in this country. A lot of times, elders are put at a disadvantage. They have this incredibly important and vital role in the church, and a lot of times, a lot of places, they're just kind of, they're put in the office, and, good luck to you, figure it out, without a whole lot of training as to what it means to be an elder, and how to practically do what elders need to do, and how to lead congregations. And so part of what the leadership school is designed to do is to help with training men to lead churches, training them to be elders, train them to be deacons, even train the preachers in better leadership models in the congregation. Because a lot of the models they have there, frankly, are just kind of strongman dictators. From the top of the government down to the regional authorities and the police, even men in the home, and even preachers in the church sometimes try to act like dictators. And that's a common model. And we got to teach out of that, because that's not the way it's supposed to be within the church especially. All right. We also have camps. Tanzania Christian Camp. It's very much along the model of Backwoods Christian Camp, other camps that are here in America, but it's hosted there at the School of Preaching. We also have Future Preacher Training Camp, which is designed to teach young people how to lead in worship service, how to conduct Bible studies, and so forth. I used to show pictures of me standing in front of a lot of different congregations to talk about the seminars we did and talk about the things that we were doing for those congregations. But I decided that was putting focus on the wrong direction. I didn't want to put the focus on me, and besides, you know what I look like standing in front of a congregation because you're looking at me now. So you don't need pictures of that. I decided to start taking pictures of the congregations that I was speaking to, so that I could see and remember, so that you could see, I could share with you the faces of the people that we're having the chance to reach, the faces of your brothers and sisters, the faces of those that are your family in Christ, have been cleansed by His blood, faces that you'll expect to see in heaven, faces that I want you to be praying for, faces that are praying for you as well. And so you'll see as we flip through, I have several slides of this, but just different congregations, different sizes, just different circumstances that they're meeting in. From the congregation, the top there, the Mukunda Church, that's in Kenya. They meet in this open-air pavilion. The congregation below there has a dirt floor, and they're all spread out because of COVID. They're trying to social distance at that congregation. That's what's going there. They're also struggling in some other ways. One congregation there, Larai, we had so many people there, we had to meet outside. The inside couldn't hold it any longer. The other one, is a bush congregation that we drove all down a dirt road to get to. Didn't see a paved road that entire day going to or from that congregation. And the congregation at the top there is the Temecu Church in Dar es Salaam. They are one of the churches that have elders. They're doing really well. And notice the big children's section there in the front corner of that congregation. The congregation below them is one that is pretty new. That building is brand new. We just finished it a month or two ago. And that congregation is being, one of our graduates from November is working there and has planted that church and helping it to grow. There's another, this takes us, the congregation on the top there is on the southern border of Tanzania. The congregation on the bottom is on the northern border. They're just crossing the whole country. The one at the top there is where I'm going to be doing a campaign there next month. It's a small, brand new congregation that the Temecu Church has helped to start. Right now they're meeting in an old, unused schoolhouse with those children's chairs that are there. Those aren't adult chairs, so you sit way down when you're there. We're concerned about sustainability, so we were able to put in solar panels at the school, get it mostly off the electric grid. We've got a farm project to help with training the students in farm work that they can do to help feed their families when they graduate, and also to help with the expenses of the school and water. Right now we're in the process of putting in a water pump. There's not any water located at the school, but we're able to find a piece of property a mile away that had water. We bought it, drilled a well. We've run a line from that property to the school property. Now all we need to do is get electricity put in and a pump put in so that we can run that water to the school. There's our corn harvest from this year. All right, so the mission in Tanzania is edification, benevolence, evangelism, and preacher training. That's what we ought to be concerned about everywhere. Needs and opportunities are our number one need. Number one need that we have is prayer. That's something that I want to ask everybody to participate in, is in prayer, from child to elderly, everything in between. You don't have to have money to pray. You don't even have to be healthy to pray. As long as you have some lucidity of mind about you, you can be involved in mission work by being prayer warriors. I want you to pray for this effort, pray for all the other mission works that you support, other mission works that you become aware of. Pray and be involved in world evangelism through prayer. Also, of course, financial contributions, monthly or one time. You all have come on as monthly contributors again, and I want to thank you for that. Also, referrals. That helps a lot. Maybe your friend, family member, third cousin twice removed, is in a leadership position at another congregation. You might mention to him this work and connect him with me, and maybe I can go and present the work to them as well. And another aspect, another way to help that is just now becoming possible. We're in the process of establishing an endowment fund. I'm concerned about providing for the long-term stability of the work over there, of the school. And I want to make sure that it is provided for long after I pass away, like Si did, long after I go the way of all the earth. We want this work to be in place. We want the school to be financially sound and running 100 years from now. And so an endowment is one method that we're looking at trying to help with that. And so the way that would work is, I want to ask you to think about in your estates, with your insurance or your estate that you're leaving behind, consider making Tanzania Missions a part of that. You see, the way that endowment would work is the money goes into an investment account, and then 5% a year is used for the operation of the school. And the principal never gets touched. And so a one-time $10,000 donation, say, the work in your will for $10,000, then that would provide at least, it would provide more than $40 a month of support for the school forever. Forever. And so what a legacy that would be. You know, in your estate is the last chance you have to let your children know, to let people know what was important to you. How great would it be if a part of that legacy you leave behind is world evangelism? So just a seed of thought to plant in your mind. So I want to leave you with this image. You know, as you become senders, as you do what you're doing, you're a part of that chain of events that God describes in Romans chapter 10, verse 14 and 15, when he says, "How then shall they call on him in whom they've not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they've not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach unless they are sent?" And so, as you sin, you become a part of that chain that results in lost souls coming to Christ. So thank you for being a part of that. Thank you for being senders. Thank you for being local evangelists here. Thank you for your heart for the Lord and His kingdom. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Daniel. Great job. A thrilling